Hello everyone, good morning. Thank you so much for joining today. My name is Ariel Palitz. I am the Executive Director for the Office of Nightlife at the Mayor's Office of Media and Entertainment. We're here today to bring you the latest information about the city's new vaccination mandate for indoor dining and entertainment venues called the Key to NYC. Needless to say, we know that you've all been through a lot, and this latest surge of the Delta variant has been particularly challenging and unpredictable. The purpose of the Key to NYC is to help motivate all New Yorkers to get vaccinated in order to keep our doors open, our city safe, and moving forward in the right direction, and to really avoid going back to any of the very difficult restrictions that this industry had to face at the beginning of the pandemic. I just want to also share for everyone's information that we will be recording this webinar and we'll be able to share it with you all after the fact. And if we don't get to all your questions or not able to answer them now, we will also be circling back in a follow-up email. While this call is slated for an hour and a half, we aim to get this in by 1 p.m. and we'll stay afterward if need be. I encourage everyone to begin entering their questions right away into the Q&A and throughout the presentation. We do have representatives from multiple city agencies who will be answering questions in the chat. And then after the presentations, we will be answering them live right away. Today, we do have brief presentations by Commissioner Jessica Tisch of the Department of Information Technology and Telecommunications, otherwise known as DOIT, to give an overview of the Key to NYC program. And we also have Joanne Kamouf-Ward from the New York City Commission on Human Rights with information about how to address the questions around exemptions and accommodations for employees and guests. But we will begin with Stephen Picker. He is the Executive Director of the Food and Beverage Partnership at Small Business Services to share with you where you can get these simple guideline one-sheets that have just been created, templates and posters to help guide you through this. So with that said, we will begin with Stephen. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ariel, and thanks to all of you for joining and taking the time to be with us today and to learn a little bit more about this initiative. So I'm going to take you through just a couple of slides to explain the basics of this vaccination mandate, and hopefully on the other side, we can continue with questions, answering your questions to make sure that everybody's clear on how to proceed. So the mayor announced that as of Tuesday, August 17th, indoor dining, indoor fitness, and indoor entertainment businesses must require proof of vaccination for employees and customers over age 12. Businesses that fall within the categories on this slide must currently be checking proof of vaccination, but enforcement will not begin until September 13th, just to provide additional time to learn and adapt to the requirements. In order to educate businesses, we'll be posting a recording of this webinar online. We will have additional webinars coming up. You can find on SBS's event page, and there are hundreds of canvassers currently, actually started 2 weeks ago, going door to door to businesses across the 5 boroughs to help educate business owners about the new requirements. Next slide, please. So what are the requirements? To allow entry indoors, covered businesses must check proof of vaccination for employees and customers over age 12. For customers 18 and older, additionally, you must check identification. Proofs of vaccination can include the New York City COVID Safe app, the state's Excelsior app, CDC card, and other official documents. You need to post the Key to NYC sign in a clearly visible place where customers can see it when they enter your business. The sign can be downloaded and printed from nyc.gov/Key to NYC, or you can call 311 to have one mailed to you. You can also create your own sign, and the requirements for that are explained in the Key to NYC FAQ document, which you can find on the Key to NYC webpage. You must additionally have a written plan describing how you'll check proof of vaccination for your staff and your customers entering your business. This plan must be available in case an inspector requests to see it. So we recommend that you either use the template provided by the city, which can also be found on the Key to NYC site, or you may create your own. Slide, please. Each Key to New York City business needs to consider appropriate reasonable accommodations, both for customers and employees, in order to be mindful of the purposes behind this policy in public health. So for customers, if a customer is unable to show proof of vaccination due specifically to a disability, you need to engage with them in a cooperative dialogue to see if a reasonable accommodation is possible. Accommodations could include having a restaurant customer purchase food to go and bringing the order to them outside, or having a fitness member join a virtual class, or speaking with a representative by phone rather than in person. For employees, reasonable accommodations must be made for a disability, pregnancy, religious belief, or status as a victim of domestic violence, stalking, or sex offenses. Accommodations here could include working remotely, performing job duties outside or indoors isolated from other employees or customers, or providing a leave of absence. Next slide, please. The city has provided many resources and made them all available to support your business on the Key to NYC webpage. Again, that's www.nyc.gov/key2NYC. As I mentioned, you can download and print the sign you're required to post at the entrance of your business. There's an extensive FAQ page linked out to from that site, which continues to be updated, that will help answer many questions you have. If you still have questions after today's webinar, please call the SBS hotline at 888-SBS-4NYC. And final note, please be aware also that the city is expanding the vaccine referral bonus program to businesses. The program form, we will drop a program form link in the chat. And if anyone has any questions on that, you can call the SBS hotline and get answers. Again, thank you all for being here. Hope that provided some basics, and we can move on with others' presentation. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Stephen. Really appreciate it. The next presentation will be with Commissioner Tisch from Do It.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. I am mainly here to answer your questions. I think Stephen gave a very good overview of what the Key to NYC program is. Let me add to that overview specifically for this audience, as I want to preempt, I think, where some of your questions will be. First thing to note for dining specifically is that Key to NYC applies to indoor dining only. So if you get rid of your indoor tables, or if you're quick service or fast food and you don't have any indoor dining and the dining is only done outdoors, the Key to NYC and the vaccine mandate don't apply to you. Second, to the extent you have people coming in for de minimis reasons, like to place an order, for a delivery, to use the bathroom, the vaccine mandate also doesn't apply. So there is a very clear de minimis exception to the Key to NYC program. Let me tell you who it does apply to though. Any customer, any employee, any contractor, anyone entering your premise for the purpose, in the case of dining, for the purpose of indoor dining. So There are no exceptions for contractors. I saw one question around that, and I just want to be really clear about that. The other thing I want to say about Key to NYC is it's a vaccine mandate, right? And it's a vaccine mandate for everyone who is eligible to receive the vaccine today. So that is 12 plus. There is no option to do, test or, vax or weekly test. This is vaccine only. And I think those are some of the big things that people get tripped up over that I wanted to make sure were very clear here. I know the other areas where there are a lot of questions often is around reasonable accommodations. So what happens if an employee or a customer comes to me and says, I have a disability and I'm not able to be vaccinated. So for that reason, we have Joanne Kamuk Ward here from our New York City, what's the name of your office, Joanne?
Commission
Oh,
on
the
Human Rights.
New York City Commission on Human Rights, excuse me, from the New York City Commission on Human Rights. And Joanne has put together all of the guidance for both businesses, customers, and employees on the Key to NYC and what we call reasonable accommodations. So I think the best thing to do is to turn it over to Joanne so that she can brief on that area.
Great, thanks. And thank you all for your time today. As Ariel mentioned at the start, I know this is really a stressful time for business owners and the workforce and really all of us that live here in the city. So I appreciate it. And I think for most people, what I'm gonna say is gonna be a bit of a refresher because I think Stephen went over the reasonable accommodations, but I think it bears repeating. And I'm also here with members of my team to answer questions. So as Commissioner Tisch mentioned, I'm a deputy commissioner at the New York City Human Rights Commission, and our job at the Human Rights Commission is to ensure compliance with the city's human rights law. And a cornerstone of that is the prohibition on discrimination. So complying with the human rights law requires that businesses, or as we refer to them, places of public accommodation, do not discriminate against individuals on the basis of their identity. That includes race, religion, national origin, and other protected categories. I think that's fairly straightforward. And I know that most of you as business owners already consider this part of your daily responsibility to treat customers and employees fairly and equally. In the context specifically of Key to NYC, non-discrimination means evaluating proof of vaccination in the same way for all customers and employees covered by the executive order. So that means looking at individuals' proof of vaccination the same, regardless of their age, race, or where they come from. It means accepting any valid proof of vaccination, including from other states and other countries. And it also means that you can't require proof of vaccination only for certain individuals based on a belief that they are more susceptible to COVID. Again, I know many of you are already doing this, so I said it's a bit of a refresher. It has already been covered by Commissioner Tisch and Stephen Picker. But most of the questions arise in the situation where a customer or an employee cannot provide proof of vaccination. Before I get to what you do in that circumstance, I did want to reiterate again what Commissioner Tisch had mentioned, which are some myths about entities covered by the EO. So first, wanted to just underscore that wearing a mask is not a substitute for vaccination in the facilities covered by the executive order. Weekly testing, also not a substitute. And standing 6 feet apart, also not a substitute. And these can be hard lines to draw, but that is what the EO requires. The thrust is that everyone needs to show proof of vaccination. But of course, there are some limited circumstances where an individual cannot show proof of vaccination. So I want to talk first about customers and second about employees, because the rules are slightly different. As Stephen mentioned, in most circumstances, if a customer can't show proof of vaccination, they can't use your business. There is one exception, the disability exception. So if a customer has a disability and that is the reason they can't show proof of vaccination, they're entitled to reasonable accommodation, which means a business owner should engage in a good faith cooperative discussion about whether or not there's still a way to serve the customer that cannot show proof of vaccination because of their disability. You do not need to provide a reasonable accommodation if it causes a direct threat to other customers or employees or imposes an undue hardship on your business. Stephen already mentioned some of the types of reasonable accommodations where an individual can't show proof of vaccination due to disability. And that could be allowing, if you're a restaurant, takeout or delivery, outdoor classes for gyms and fitness, or some sort of virtual or telephonic engagement in other instances. Something I think that's important about customers and reasonable accommodations on the basis of disability is that if someone says they have a disability and that is the reason they can't get proof of vaccination, it is not up to the business to evaluate whether or not their claim of a disability is a valid one or not. The obligation on the business owner is to see if there's a way to work with the customer to come up with a reasonable accommodation. So that just means don't ask invasive questions. You can't require a doctor's note. You work with an individual who says they have a disability, and that's the reason they cannot get vaccinated. Individuals, again, who are unable to show proof of vaccination for any other reason outside of disability, if they are customers, can't use and enjoy the facilities that we're talking about. They can enter for a quick and limited purpose, as Commissioner Tisch mentioned, using the bathroom, placing a takeout order, and during that brief time must either have a mask or be able to maintain 6 feet of distance. So I want to now just talk quickly about employees. Employees and employers have a different relationship than customers and businesses. So the rules are a little bit different. So everything I said about the disability context applies for employees. But employees are also entitled a reasonable accommodation to perform their job if they're unable to show proof of vaccination for the other 3 reasons that Stephen mentioned: pregnancy, a religious belief, or because of their status as a victim of domestic violence, stalking, or sex offense, which might limit someone's ability either to get the vaccination or to be able to provide their proof of vaccination. So where an employee cannot show proof of vaccination for one of the 4 reasons that we've identified, employers should engage in, again, a good faith conversation, a constructive dialogue to see if there's a reasonable accommodation that's possible so that an employee can continue to work. And reasonable accommodations can include remote work, working in the outdoor part of a facility, or in some limited circumstances where you could guarantee complete isolation of an employee from other employees or customers, really meaning in a separate 4-walled room with a door where there's no contact. That is a possibility. Similar to what I mentioned in the customer context, an employer does not need to provide a reasonable accommodation if it creates a threat or poses undue hardship on the business. If there is no reasonable accommodation possible for an employee, a business can offer a leave of absence until an employee is able possibly to get vaccinated until the order is lifted or till there's another indication that it is safe for employees to return to work without the precautions laid out in the executive order. There is also the option, though no one wants typically to be letting employees go, of firing an employee. And the difference between the leave of absence and firing is the leave of absence signals to an employee that you intend to return them to work when the EO is lifted or it otherwise is appropriate. And I can talk a little bit about the types of proof for the different forms of exceptions to the main rule that people that are unvaccinated can't come to work. But I also know we have a time limit, so I think I'll instead pause and happy to go into the details, and also have another colleague on the line who can assist.
Thank you, Joanne. We can also provide those forms and documents in our follow-up email as well. So now we will, unless Commissioner Tisch, you would like to chime in and add some things left unsaid, we can begin our Q&A. We have a substantial amount.
Yeah, no, I'd love to begin the Q&A. I've actually been looking at some of the questions as they've been coming in and eager to get them answered.
Okay.
And like I said, if there's anything that we can't answer today, 100% we will follow up on every question.
Thank you. I also want to mention in the wings, we have Commissioner Andel Castillo from the Mayor's Office of Media and Entertainment, Christian Klosner of the Office of Special Enforcement, otherwise known as OSE, Deputy Commissioner Corinne Schiff from the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene, and Jeff Dupay from City Hall to be able to answer questions either live or in the chat. So with that, I will also be sharing this responsibility with Stephen Picker from SBS, who has been sifting through the Q&A, and let us begin. Thank you.
All right, so first question, if you are a restaurant and will close your dining room and only do takeout or online ordering, do we still need to have employees be vaccinated?
So if you are a restaurant and you do not have indoor dining, then you are not subject to Key to NYC, and therefore your employees do not need to be vaccinated under the Key to New York City program.
Thank you. Next, we've got, if you are a cafe in a building that checks vaccination status, such as an office building, before entering the building, do you have to check vaccination status before entering the cafe itself?
I would, because ultimately the responsibility is on the cafe to make sure that no person enters, that no customer or employee enters their premise without showing proof of vaccination. So I would not rely on a building to do that. They may have different policies that don't exactly align with the rules associated with Key to NYC.
Thank you. Next question, who do we call if a customer refuses to show ID and continues to enter our establishment?
That's a great question. So I think we failed to mention, there is a website, it's nyc.gov/key to NYC. And on that website, you'll find all different sorts of materials related to the program. The executive order, a digestible FAQ, information from the New York City Commission on Human Rights related to the reasonable accommodation issues we discussed. But also on there is a video that's put together by the New York City Conflict Resolution Center about useful tips about how to handle situations where customers may be reasonably upset or surprised that they are not able to enter the premise. So we recommend that you review that video, you have your staff review that video if you think it's helpful. But ultimately, it is on the business to do the checks and make sure that people don't enter a covered business unvaccinated. Obviously, God forbid, if anything, if you feel unsafe, you can always call 911 as you can in any circumstance, when you're a bar turning someone away for, failure to show identification. But that's really our recommendation, is to, among other things, review that video that we posted on the Key to NYC website.
Thank you. Next question is specifically around what enforcement process will look like. Questioner wants to know, which city agencies will inspectors be from? Will inspectors always identify themselves, or where will they arrive undercover? And how regularly will inspectors visit businesses, and what exactly will they be checking for?
Sure, and we're going to be putting more information out over the rest of this week and next on enforcement that I think is going to shed a lot of light on all of those questions. But let me preview some of it for you. So first, inspections begin on September 13th. So as you know, the program went into effect the week of August 17th. So basically for that month, from August 17th to September 13th, we've used this as a burn-in period for businesses to get used to the program, to implement it, to work out any kinks, to get any questions they need answered, webinars like we're doing today. And we also have a team of 600 canvassers that are blanketing the city, going business to business with more helpful information. So the inspections begin on September 13th, and what you can expect there is a group of largely civilian inspectors, right? So the NYPD is not going to be participating in the inspections. It's a group of inspectors pulled from various city agencies, among them inspectors from the Department of Health. And that team of inspectors will be doing two things. They will be doing proactive inspections, but they will also be doing some directed inspections in response to 311 calls for service. So if someone calls 311 and says, yep, this business is not checking vaccination status, that 311 complaint would reasonably be passed along to an inspector who would follow up. I want to be really clear that the inspectors are not going to be checking individual vax cards. They're going to be looking for three high-level things. First, is the poster in the window? Per the executive order, one of the requirements of Key to NYC is that you have the DOH approved signage in the window in a visible location from the outside of your business. Second, does the business have a written plan for how they are going to carry out this mandate and meet the requirements of the executive order? Also on our Key to NYC website, you will find a template with a template for that plan should you choose to use it. But they will be asking the manager to be able to see the plan for how they are implementing the Key to NYC mandates. And the third thing the inspectors are obviously going to be looking for is that business implementing the plan? Are vaccination checks occurring? So I think the headlines to that answer was no NYPD involved in inspections, largely civilian inspectors may be aided by the sheriff's office, which is why I say largely civilian. And they're looking really for those three main things: the sign, the written plan, and also the business carrying out the plan.
Thank you, Commissioner. I just want to also mention that Kevin from the Office of Nightlife is posting links to each relevant source as they're mentioned along the way. So you can go and check in the Q&A for anyone who is looking for it.
Cool. All right, Stephen, keep them coming.
All right, so can you please address to-go orders? Will there be an alternate sign that we can post, as the current one doesn't seem to reflect the mandate for picking up to-go orders, taking out drink orders for quick and limited periods?
I'm going to take that feedback back. Right now, the signage that is on the website and it's being distributed to the canvassers is the approved signage, and you can't do alternative signage. But I hear the feedback about to-go orders, deliveries, that type of thing. So I will take it back and we will consider it.
Thank you. Let's see. Are we allowed to ask a customer for proof of medical, or just advise that they will be, sorry, not sure I understand the question. Advise that they will be required to wear a mask at all times while in the indoor dining portion of the restaurant.
Let me answer that one. I think as Joanne explained, if a customer has or if the customer has a disability, or an employee has a disability, religious belief, there's two other categories that make it so that they cannot get vaccinated. You can't allow them in the covered premise, even with a mask. So a reasonable accommodation does not include allowing them to do the prohibited activity. So as an example, if you have a waiter who has a religious belief that is not does not allow him or her to get vaccinated, he or she cannot wait tables indoors. She can wait tables outdoors, but not indoors. So I want to be really clear that masking is not an alternative for someone who requires or who's seeking an accommodation.
And I think perhaps just from the question, it sounds like there was another piece of the question, which was around inquiring into the actual underlying reason for the accommodation. And for a customer, that is not appropriate. So if someone says, I can't get vaccinated because of a disability, you have a conversation about the possibility of service along the lines of what Commissioner just outlined. If it's an employee, you can ask for a doctor's note, but this is not to get into people's personal information, but rather to think about how to continue relationships and engagement respectful of privacy, but meeting business needs as well.
I just wanted to bring up one point of clarification that came to me regarding the civilian inspectors. Does that mean, are they still going to be part of the city agencies? What does civilian inspector mean?
Oh, I apologize for not being clear and for using jargon here. Yes, the inspectors will be pulled from a number of different city agencies. For example, the Department of Health has inspectors. They will be working on and leading some of these inspection efforts. And we are pulling inspectors who work at other city agencies to participate.
Thank you. Next question, are customers required to wear a mask at all times except when seated after showing their proof of vaccination?
So the Key to NYC program is just about vaccinations. So assuming that you are a customer who comes in, you show your proof of vaccination. There is no masking requirement that is part of the Key to New York City program. There are masking requirements in like 2 big areas you should know about. First, kids under the age of 12 who are not eligible to get vaccinated may enter and dine in your premise. So they are not subject to the vaccination mandate under the Key to NYC program. Those kids, when they are not dining, should be masked. The second masking requirement is if you have someone entering for a delivery, for pickup, one of those de minimis exceptions that I was discussing earlier, those people are also required to be masked with social distancing.
Thank you. Are we required to keep proof of vaccination for our
No.
staff?
No, you are not required to keep proof of vaccination for your staff, but you are required to ensure that only vaccinated staff enter the covered premise. Joanne, would you like to add anything to that answer?
No.
Okay. Cool. All right. Is it appropriate to ask those unable to show proof of vaccination due to a disability to contact the venue in advance to discuss reasonable accommodation? I'm not sure how we would contact them in advance if they didn't arrive at the venue with no proof of vaccination, but it's possible that they might call to discuss in advance.
I can't really, give guidance on that one. Certainly, that's a nice courtesy to give people so that they don't, come to a restaurant expecting to be able to dine indoors. But given that even with a disability, people are not going to be able to dine indoors, that conversation would be something like, oh, we have a nice backyard with tables outside. Can we seat you there? Or we have outdoor dining on the street. Can we seat you there? But I think it needs to be really clear that you even with an accommodation, you can't allow the prohibited activity. Joanne, would you like to answer?
No, I agree with what you are saying. I mean, for the most part, it should be an individualized conversation, and that the needs of individuals might be different, which is why we suggest the good faith conversation and case by case discussion. I think, again, we want to make sure that we're just respecting people's privacy as well. And so thinking about how you would come into information about who needs an accommodation in a not immediate interaction.
Is there an end date set for this mandate?
There is not an end date currently set for the mandate. It's a question that we get a lot. And I want to be very clear that we are doing this to avoid a shutdown of the city. And we will do this as long as it is required to avoid that very bad scenario.
I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but in the same way that we may keep a list for employees, for frequent guests, can we keep a record of vaccination status to avoid having to check proof every time they visit the venue? And if so, what would that need to include?
Okay, so that question comes up a lot. It actually comes up when we're talking to gyms. So for gyms, I'll give you the example. If it's a membership gym, and you're checking a person's identity, meaning there's someone sitting like at a front desk checking people as they come in, making sure they're members. Hello, Jesse, how are you? And is able to look on file and see that identity. This person is a member and her vaccination status. That is sufficient. So I would just say that that must be part of the written plan, so that when the inspectors come, that they can see that. But again, there has to be a point at which, people aren't just streaming through. Someone needs to be able to check an identity and check against a list.
Okay, next question is specific to the 3 covered business types. So why restaurants and not a supermarket or deli or Home Depot?
So I don't have the doctors on this call, and I'd prefer not to paraphrase them. I've gotten myself in trouble doing that in the past. So what I'd like to do with that question is follow up with a written answer when we have that the doctors can prepare.
And I will follow up by saying there is an answer. So we just
Yeah.
need to get the right one. Yes. All right. We have already begun to enforce the mandate and have experienced backlash and violence. We're a bar restaurant and never have had security, and we're not in a place to currently afford it. How can the city support us, and will they be understanding of the fact?
So for that one, Stephen, I actually want to leave it to SBS to answer. I know that Janelle spoke to certain SBS programs that were in place before Key to NYC, but were good resources for business owners. So I either defer to you to answer now, or we can also follow up in writing if you don't have that information at your fingertips now.
Understood. If you know that the commissioner has spoken to that, then I'd like to check in with him and we'll make sure and get that answer out.
It was in the SBS webinar, and one of the SBS webinars.
Got it.
Cool.
All
It
right.
might-
Yeah, Ariel, go ahead.
It might be worth mentioning that Oath also produced a video that is on our website and that we've been circulating, and I'm sure can be found everywhere, on dispute resolution. It's a training video for employees to be prepared for what might be an inevitable situation like this. And it provides tools on how to avoid de-escalation and how to address as well.
I'm sorry, I think I must have misinterpreted the question. I was thinking that the reference was financial resources, and so I was answering in that context. But yes, Ariel, thank you. There is the video on the Key to NYC website that's put together by the New York City Conflict Resolution Center, and it's quite good.
All right, specific question around offering a leave of absence. Do employees that are put on a leave of absence, are they able to collect unemployment insurance? And will the company remain responsible for paying their medical coverage?
So I want to defer to Joanne on that one.
So the terms of a leave of absence should be the same for all your employees. So if you typically pay people or pay their benefits, that should stay. But I want to confirm on the medical benefits part, because that's not exactly in our wheelhouse. On unemployment, that's also a state level question, the decision about unemployment. So there are conditions that will need to be in place for someone to be able to qualify for that. But I'll double check and circle back on the medical benefits piece if there's anything different than what I just said.
Thank you. Can we create our own signage with similar language to the city signage, or must it be the signage from the website with the QR code?
It must be the signage from the website with the QR code that is called out in the executive order. And so we just ask that everyone use the official city approved sign.
Is it legal to ask if, it says an applicant, so I'm not sure if we're referring to employees or here. Is it legal to ask if they're vaccinated or not? Also, if they are not vaccinated, but we want to hire them, do we hire them pending scheduling until vaccination or wait for them to get vaccinated before hiring them?
Joanne, would you like to take that
Not
one?
sure if that was clear enough.
Yeah, can you say that again, Stephen?
Yes, I will try and clarify. So it seems the person would like to, it's a question around hiring a new employee. Can they hire them pending scheduling until they get vaccinated, or must they wait until the employee shows proof of vaccination to actually hire them?
I believe you can make a conditional offer subject to the vaccination, but we'll circle back if there's anything different from my colleagues to report on that.
Are Department of Health employees required to be vaccinated? A friend recently had a visit from 2 DOH representatives and they were not.
Is the Department of Health on?
I think Corinne had to jump to another presentation.
Okay. So let's move on and we can answer that one if relevant.
All right, fair enough.
That's not key to NYC.
Please give examples of direct threat. I think
I don't know the context of that.
direct threat and religious accommodations.
So for the purposes of key to NYC, the direct threat is the health threat posed by the Delta variant, which is the reason for the rules in these particular facilities. If you look at the EO, that's the basis.
Do we need to take proof of vaccination from delivery drivers?
No, deliveries would be included in the de minimis exception, but they should be masked.
Okay. I have 4 entrances to our 40,000 square foot facility. Are we expected to have someone at each of our entrances to check for status?
You are expected to ensure that no customer or employee enters the covered premise unvaccinated. Unless it's obviously for one of the very small exceptions that we've gone through here. So if you're going to use 4 entrances, then the answer is yes.
How will the inspector check that our business has followed the implementation properly?
So I think I gave before when I answered a similar question, a high level overview of inspections. The inspectors are primarily going to be looking for 3 things. Is the sign in the window? Does the business have a written implementation plan? You can see the template on the Key to NYC website. And third, the inspectors are visually going to be checking to make sure that the business is executing against that plan and ensuring that the Key to NYC requirements are met. They will not be checking individual vaccination status.
If we have to hire additional person to stand at the door to check Vax cards, are there any incentives offered by the city?
So this is the question that I was answering beforehand when I misinterpreted it. Apologies to everyone. But for that, I think on an SBS webinar recently, the commissioner overviewed a number of SBS programs that may be of relevance here. And so what I would ask is, Stephen, that we follow up as part of Ariel's follow-up with a list of those programs. But there is not one that is specific to Key to NYC and extra costs incurred as a result of it.
Thank you. We have a wedding that has purchased the entire space for their reception. The priest and the parents of the bride cannot show proof of vax due to religious reasons. Can they attend the event because it's a private and not a general public event?
No, that's a violation of KETA NYC. So you cannot allow unvaccinated into an indoor premise, covered premise.
If we do not hire a non-vaccinated person, is that considered discrimination?
Joanne, would you like to take that one?
I think this is a question about when this happens also in a process of hiring. I think you can require employees to get vaccinated with the reasonable accommodation exceptions that I've already laid out, right? Making accommodations for individuals who cannot get vaccinated for a particular disability or religious belief, or the other two categories, pregnancy or status as a victim of domestic violence. So I think you would want, it would depend where you are in the process, and I think that would not be a reason to not hire someone as a standalone. That's my take. I don't know if this question has come up in other arenas that you've responded
So why don't
to.
we do this? We'll get with the city's lawyers, the law department, and Ariel, we will also follow up on this question as well, because I did note in the reasonable accommodation guidance that the business is not required to create hardship on themselves. So I just want to be able to give a very crisp answer to that question.
We have a couple of duplicate questions here. What are penalties, and can an inspector shut down a business?
Sure. So there is an escalating fine structure. Starts at $1,000 for the first violation, $2,000 for the second, and up to $5,000. I need to come back on the question of whether an inspector could shut down a business. That certainly would not occur as a result of the first three violations, however. And I want to be clear that every violation after the third would remain at $5,000, so it doesn't go up above that.
Are we allowed to offer our wait staff a weekly COVID test option? Or do we have to have them work outside only, or provide them a leave of absence?
So again, this policy is vaccination only. There is no vax or test option here. So yeah.
I think we actually didn't get into the details of this. Do we need to ask our guests for a photo ID to match their vaccination proof?
Thank you for that question, and I'm sorry I neglected to answer it. So yes, the requirement is that you check vaccination status and that you compare it to photo ID to make sure that the name matches between the vax proof and the ID.
Thank you. Will the state liquor authority be involved in enforcing this, as was done with mask mandates?
I believe the answer is no, but we have, well, I'm certain that the state liquor authority is not, part of the inspection team from the city, but I would defer to Christian Klossner on if and whether there would be any involvement with the state liquor authority. I think the answer is no.
The answer is no. Obviously, the state liquor authority operates independently and from the state, and we are not requesting any action by them based on compliance with KEDA NYC.
Thank you. I think we have actually, I mean, there's a number of questions still in the Q&A, but many of them have been touched on and answered another. Yes, Ariel, you've got your finger up.
Just some that I've seen in regards to, I can't remember if we addressed it, if there is after September 13th, a warning period, or does it go right into the fine structure?
This whole month, you should think of as the warning period. So we felt like we did something untraditional, which was give businesses a month to get used to this, work the kinks out, ask the questions without any fines. So we do expect on September 13th to begin fining businesses for non-compliance.
I think we touched on this one. Sorry, Ariel. If inspectors will possibly be undercover, or if all inspectors are required to show ID on arrival.
Inspectors will identify themselves upon arrival. Christian, can you just confirm that I got that 100% correct? All inspectors will identify themselves upon arrival and will not be working undercover?
In the very rare circumstance that a complaint was about a business that stopped checking vaccine proofs as soon as the city inspector left, we might resort, but the vast majority of these checks for compliance are someone who is likely wearing uniform, probably with a badge. They may not walk in and interrupt an encounter. They will take the chance to observe the interaction between the business and a customer, but 100% will, if asked, identify themselves and are being instructed to identify themselves at the point where they begin interacting with the location staff and asking questions about the plan and how they're complying.
And just for a point of clarification, the requirement for contact tracing is no longer in place, correct?
So the requirement for contact tracing came from the state. So it is completely separate from KEDA NYC. KEDA NYC is like fairly simple, and it's in that it's just like a vaccine mandate. I don't want to misspeak on whether the state is requiring additional contact tracing, but it is certainly not a part of the KEDA NYC program.
And do they need to?
There is a question about, oh, sorry. Go ahead, Ariel.
Do they need to put up a sign saying customers sitting outdoors do not need to be checked for vaccine?
Oh.
Go ahead, Stephen.
There is a question how to identify proof of vaccination for international guests.
That's a good question. So I'm going to direct you for that answer to the KEDA NYC website, where you will find information about that. There's also information about that in the guides that SBS, the Small Business Services, put out for each industry. It goes through the different pieces of information that you would see on international vaccine records. So rather than summarizing, I'm gonna send you to look at the KEDA NYC website, in particular, the SBS guides that are on that website that have a section on that.
Thank you. Ariel, unless you have any that you specifically want to call out here, I think we have touched on pretty much every question. And again, just to clarify, we will be putting all these answers together and forwarding them to all attendees.
Yes, and also there are continuing webinars available on the SBS website that you can also find in the hotline. You're also welcome to reach out to any of us, nightlife@media.nyc.gov. There are many opportunities to be able to continue to ask questions. You can contact anyone on this panel, and we will be sending a follow-up email as well. I just want to, thank everyone Commissioner Tisch and Deputy Commissioner Kamuf Ward and Stephen Picker and all of the representatives from the city agencies for joining this call today. These are really hard times. It's imperative we keep moving forward. Before we hang up, I just want to let you all know that the Office of Nightlife has also recently launched the Elevate Nightlife Mental Health Initiative to help you and your employees address the pressures that you all might be facing and to connect nightlife workers with free and low-cost mental health services. We also have a free weekly online support group with Backline every Monday at 4 p.m. to help provide that mental health support. These are very hard times, but we are getting through it and getting through it together. And so just know that this office and everyone on this call and the city has your back. And let's just keep moving forward. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay strong. And thank you for joining us today.